Let's get into it. I want to start with the bracket preview that aired on CBS this weekend. It's America's most watched network. It's a network of stars. The committee told us that as of Saturday morning, the 4 number 1 seeds were in order: Michigan, Duke, Arizona, Iowa State. Norlander, did you have any complaints with those 4 teams in that order?
Complaints, no. Disagreements, yes. The media put Houston on the one line, and we actually talked about it for a good probably like 10 minutes when we did our selection on, I'm losing track of my days here. I guess that was Thursday. And keep in mind, when we did that, there were about 3 or 4 selection committee members that stayed over. We're still in the room, including Chair Keith Gill, Vice Chair Martin Newton, which if you haven't checked the feed, Josh, appreciate you doing that. He dropped in the quick 10-minute HQ interview I did with the Vice Chair on Saturday afternoon after this came out. So they knew that they were going to have Iowa State on the 1 seed, and they probably just had some chuckles internally as they heard us hash it all out. And it was not a universal decision. CL Brown, who's longtime great writer out of Kentucky and done great work in North Carolina, he advocated for Iowa State to be on the one line. CJ Moore also did as well, but ultimately Houston won out. The surprise here, though, Parrish, is that it was not Iowa State versus Houston for the final spot. It was Iowa State versus Yukon, which was the best 2 seed in the group there overall. So it went Iowa State 4, Yukon 5, Houston 6. As this happens every single year, this bracket comes out, and then it is immediately deemed largely irrelevant by the end of the weekend because results have changed the very nature of this stuff. We're going to get to Duke and Michigan in short order. Quite obviously, Duke would be the number 1 overall seed right now if the committee redid this because they were the top 2 teams. Duke won on a neutral, yada, yada, yada. So I was surprised by Iowa State, and then Iowa State, by the way, Iowa State lost. I think Yukon is now back on the one line as a result of winning on the road. We'll get to all of that. I was surprised Texas Tech was not only in the field, Texas Tech was rated as the best 4 seed in the field. So for the purposes here, they did not, and keep in mind, when the committee was doing all of this, quite literally, as they were doing this, Texas Tech was playing against Arizona State. It lost that game. JT Toppin went out with an injury, and before the committee broke and went their separate ways, they knew that Toppin was done for the year with a season-ending injury. They opted not to implement that as it pertained to Texas Tech, which was a little surprising, but just so everyone realizes here, Texas Tech is going to have 3+ weeks worth of games to play without Toppin. It is my estimation that Toppin's injury is not going to affect Texas Tech's seeding on Selection Sunday because they are going to have more than enough data and game results to evaluate where Texas Tech should be slotted overall. But I was surprised to see him as high as they were in the bracket. What were your takeaways?
We all did a bracket preview for CBSSports.com. Mine was more or less the top 16 of the top 25 and 1, just ordered slightly differently for bracketing principle reasons. And I had it Michigan, Duke, Arizona, and Iowa State as the 4 number 1 seeds in that order. So no complaints for me. I did think it was a debate as of Saturday morning between Iowa State and Houston. But like you said, the committee said they thought it was more of a debate between Yukon and Iowa State. Either way, I had the 4 number 1 seeds right. I had 15 of the 16 schools in the top 16, in the top 16 of the top 25 and 1 on Saturday morning as well. I had the 2 seeds. I had 3 of the 4 correct. The 3 seeds, I had 3 of the 4 correct. The 4 seeds, I had 3 of the 4 correct in terms of the number next to their name. But in total, 15 of the teams you see right there in that graphic were also in the top 16 of the top 25 and 1 on Saturday morning. So like I told Emily Proud on CBS Sports HQ, it is always I guess refreshing on some level. You rank 26 basketball teams every morning in November, December, January, throughout February. And every day, the internet can't wait to tell you how you don't know what you're doing. And then we get the bracket preview show, and it lines up basically exactly what I've been trying to tell you, for months now. So, that's me patting myself on the back. The one miss, did not have Texas Tech in my top 16.
Did we both miss on the same team out of curiosity? I had Bama as the final team on the 4 line.
I need to see who I had.
And Bama, by the way, was the first cut. They revealed that after. I was surprised. I just thought they would bump Tech off the 4 line. So Bama I had there as virtue of its win over Arkansas. Those two played a phenomenal game, obviously, midweek last week. Sorry to throw a curveball for you there. But, I was curious.
I know who I had in. I had St. John's in. as a 4 seed,
Okay.
and I had Texas Tech out. And I guess the argument for putting Texas Tech in is that based on their resume, there's some data to support it. But they did just very publicly lose not only their best player, but like one of the best players in the entire country. And if you want to take a wait and see approach with them, like I'm not going to fight about it. I'm not going to argue intensely. It's just a television show. But I don't need to see Texas Tech without JT Toppin to know that Texas Tech probably isn't one of the 16 best teams in the country. I think EvanMia.com had it where the numbers were something along the lines of his computer had Texas Tech rated as like a top 15 team with JT Toppin, but outside of the top 40 without JT Toppin. So I would not have had Texas Tech in the top 16, but it is a minor quibble. And at the end of the day, not that big of a deal. Let me ask you about this because I had all the 1 seeds right, and I had 3 of the 4 2 seeds correct. Where I missed is I had Florida as a 2 and Yukon as a 3. The committee had Yukon as a 2 and Florida as a 3. Were you surprised that Yukon was as high as it was? Do you think Yukon should be? I know you said you think they would be the 1 seed right now based off of what the committee showed us Saturday morning. Do you think Yukon should be a 1 seed right now?
I do. Yukon is 4th in resume metrics with some daylight between them and Purdue. It's got a very healthy record. It just won on the road against a projected single-digit seed. And the predictives are where they get a little bit dinged here. But if I was doing it right now coming out of the weekend, I would have Yukon as the 4th one, benefited by the fact that Iowa State lost. Iowa State has one more loss than Yukon, and to me, that kind of stuff can matter when you're really, getting to the narrow margins and doing one versus another. Houston didn't win, so that all the more helps. Illinois didn't win, so that helps. And Yukon has some space, I think, between itself and Purdue overall. So yeah, I do believe that that Yukon should be the 4th one right now.
I would still have Iowa State as 1 seed. Like everybody in that range lost. So it'd be pretty easy right now. You're going to have Michigan, Duke, Arizona in some order, and then you get into a debate about number 4. I think I would still have Iowa State as the 4th number 1 seed. I had them 4th in the top 25 and 1 on Sunday morning. As for the bracket preview, like I had somebody ask, why would you have Florida over Yukon, which is a completely reasonable question. I'll try to answer it. Yukon is the only projected number 1 or number 2 seed in the bracket preview with a quadrant 3 loss. They have 6 quadrant 1 wins. That's low relative to the other teams in that range. Florida has 2 more quadrant 1 wins than Yukon, 1 fewer quadrant 3 loss because they have 0. Florida's higher in the net, higher at KenPom, higher at Torvik, higher at Evan Mia, higher in the BPI. I know Florida has 3 more total losses than Yukon, but some of that's
twice as many losses is the big reason why they're not ahead of them. Yes.
That's a perfectly reasonable point to make. I would just counter it with, I think that's more schedule induced than anything else. Yukon has played a tough schedule. It ranks 28th in the country according to KenPom. Florida has played a tougher schedule. It ranks 4th in the country according to KenPom. Again, no big deal either way. I could turn around just like that and make the case for Yukon over Florida, but I don't think there's anything ridiculous about Florida over Yukon. I just laid out the argument you would make if you were trying to make.
All right, a couple quick notes from the NCAA, and then we can move on if you want. We've gone now. This was the 10th version of this, or the 9th or 10th version of this. Obviously, there wasn't one in 2020. The only year, so dating back almost a decade here, the only year where the same 1 seeds in this reveal were also the 1 seeds on Selection Sunday was 2023. And all the other 7 previous years where we've had a subsequent tournament, 3 of the 4 remained on the 1 line. So I think that is going to absolutely hold here. I think we are going to get to Selection Sunday. Hello, folks. 3 weeks from today. Okay. In fact, as we do this at this very moment, we'll be within 2 hours of the bracket reveal. While not guaranteed, it feels fait accompli. Duke, Michigan, Arizona will be your 3 ones. And then we get into the battle of Yukon, Houston, Iowa State. Don't count out Purdue. If Illinois really, went on a big run, perhaps it's there. It's going to be one of those. I think that pattern will continue. I will note that Yukon was the 1 seed. I think the committee said this as well. on big CBS. Martin told me on the interview as well. It was the 1 seed, and then it lost to Creighton, and then it lost that there. So I just don't think there's that much daylight between those teams. And I hope that makes for a really compelling race for the final 1 seed. And then in the previous 8 times that we've had a subsequent tournament, all but one of the 32 teams that were on the 2 line specifically, remained in the top 16. So the point is, if you are a fan of a school that had a 1 or a 2 next to its name on Saturday afternoon, you're almost virtually guaranteed to be nothing worse than a 4. And only 6 number 3 seeds have failed to do it over the previous 8 times we've seen this. Again, we can't count the 9th time because there was no tournament in 2020. So there's still, we do strike the balance of, we only get one of these, which I do appreciate, because the way college football does it is idiotic. So we get one. We're far enough away from Selection Sunday where, like, we've got a good idea of how the clay is going to be molded, but there can be significant changes, and you can have teams. I want to say that Kansas might have been the team in recent years. I can't remember the specific season. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the seed line, but it might be Kansas that was the team that, like, it might have been the 2 and it drops significantly down. We typically don't have that situation where you've got a team that's featured here, and then you look up on Selection Sunday and you find yourself caught in the 8-9 game or on the 7 line. But that being said, there's still plenty of room to maneuver, and that is evidenced by the fact that literally the brackets shown in full by, I don't know, 12:45 Eastern, 12:50 Eastern on Saturday, and all of, less than 12 hours later, there's just teams obviously moving left and right, most notably with the huge duel in the district that saw the number 1 overall seed flip.